Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming this morning and turning up in such large numbers. As you know that we've already made an announcement that the national budget will be delivered on the 17th of July, which is in a few weeks' time. And then, of course, there's a week's break, and then we debate the budget, and then the budget gets approved. We've been in Lautoka and Nandi yesterday. We are here today. We're hoping to go to Ba, but I'm told the Ba people aren't ready for us as yet. I hope some of you are from Ba over here. We just want to very quickly give you a quick snapshot in respect of the economy, of course, vis-a-vis the pandemic that's hit the globe. And of course, globally, all the countries are suffering. IMF is now continuously revising its figures in terms of the downward trend in the global growth, or in fact the regression in the global economy. And of course, Fiji has also been hit by the pandemic, and hit is the word for it. Our regional neighbors too, the larger countries, Australia and New Zealand, have also suffered quite significantly. As I highlighted in Nandi yesterday, just a couple of months ago, within 1 month, Australia had lost 600,000 jobs. That's nearly 2/3 of the population of Fiji in 1 month. As far as the Fijian economy is concerned, obviously our major source of revenue from tourism, we depend about 40% of our GDP is dependent on tourism, has essentially dried up. There's no tourists coming to Fiji. So as a result of that, when we had our first case, in fact, we revised our budget, as you know, with the COVID response budget, taking into account the anticipated decrease in revenue receipts, predominantly from the reduction in VAT, reduction in STT, and of course ECAL, and the ancillary spill over into the overall economy, because obviously when there are far less people with jobs, far less receipts coming through, then people have less money to spend, and of course job losses will result in less spending taking place. It's not just the tourism sector. Some of you I see here are from the garment industry also, and the garment industry has also been affected because of the lack of demand for garments in countries like Australia and New Zealand, where we predominantly supply to those countries. Because when you have lockdowns, in Sydney and Auckland, people don't go out and shop. They don't go and buy things. So as a result of which, the demand on your goods that you produce over here will significantly diminish. Now, what we obviously have done is take into account these ground realities, take into account the fact that the most constant thing, or the most certain thing about this particular pandemic is the uncertainty. As we have Dr. Fong here with us. Dr. Fong is the acting PS for health, and he will talk to you about the health aspects of the pandemic and how it actually has a flow-in effect on the economy. We also joined, of course, by Minister Koya, Minister of Commerce, Trade and Tourism and Transport, the PS for Economy, Makreta Konrote, Shiri Gaunda, who is also the head of fiscal planning in the Ministry of Economy and Strategic Thinking, and we have Tupo Baravilala, who will talk to you about Care Fiji. Care Fiji, of course, is a very integral part of our way forward, and we'll explain to you later as to why we're doing that, why it is important, I should say. Now, overall, it's interesting because when you do a couple of sessions, people ask you questions. Somebody asked a question yesterday in Nandi, why doesn't the Reserve Bank of Fiji simply print money? So, we get lots of money and then we can then circulate that. Obviously, we're not in the business of printing money, because if you print money, simply go out and print money, you can cause hyperinflation, because the value of your dollar will come down significantly. The Reserve Bank has various mechanisms through which they can issue funds into the economy, but they have their own guidelines. You simply don't go out and print money. The reality, of course, is that many countries have different ways of dealing with this pandemic, but also a lot of it stems fundamentally from the economic structures that we do have in place. When the organizations like World Bank and IMF were formed post-World War II, many of the countries that today form part of the Small States Forum, for example, the World Bank, many of the countries that exist today did not exist then. They weren't independent states. We were all living in a colonized world. So, you had Europe essentially, and you had North America, and you had Australia and New Zealand, and you had the Marshall Plan that was rolled out. So all the mostly all the African states, the Caribbean states, the Pacific Island states, did not exist as individual countries. So the architecture that was actually built in those days, as far as the financial architecture was concerned, is significantly different. And we're catering for a particular set of countries with a particular set of dynamics. So, to put a case in point, recently when the Australian government had to deal with the pandemic, they put a $15.6 billion stimulus package. The Reserve Bank of Australia essentially, issued funds into the economy with the Australian government buying bonds at a yield rate of 0.08%, which we can only dream of. So these are very significantly, different situations that different countries are dealing with. But the upshot of it all is that all the countries actually are going through a particular crisis of sorts, or particular situation where they need to deal with, and it is unprecedented. We've never had such a situation where in the modern times entire borders have been closed off. So the economic recovery framework that we highlighted through the Honourable Prime Minister, or announced last week on Sunday, has a number of mechanisms to try and open up the economy. As you know, which has included the tweaking of the curfew hours, the gyms are now open, and various other facilities like swimming pools, etc., are now open. The increase in numbers, there's less than 100 of you over here, but a few weeks ago, more than 20 people could not get together. So these are some of the measures that have domestically been rolled out. And then of course we have rolled out in respect of cross-border travel, and we've announced a number of initiatives. For example, we announced the Bula Bubble, which includes the travel between Australia, New Zealand and Fiji, or I should say Australians and Kiwis being able to travel to Fiji under certain conditions. And then we've got the Pacific Pathway, which is to allow for travel under certain conditions, people from Kiribati, Tuvalu and Tonga to come to Fiji. And then we've said we can expand that later on. Then we have what we call the blue lanes, which is the allowing of yachts and pleasure craft, etc., to come to Fiji again under certain conditions. And of course we'll get Dr. James Wong to talk about that. And then we have, for example, we had a number of movies and TV series that were being shot in Fiji, and we've said that they can also now come to Fiji again under certain conditions. Just to put into perspective, the New Zealand government allowed the producers of Avatar, those of you may have heard of Avatar, to come and do the sequel to that, the Avatar series. So we've also said, for example, one of the major ones is Survivor, which is shooting over here in one of the islands, that they can also come to, but under certain conditions again. Again, we have the pathway for those people who may come from COVID-contained countries. In other words, what some people call COVID-free, but we say COVID-contained countries, and how they can travel to Fiji, and what are the restrictions or no restrictions for them to be able to move around freely. We are doing all of this obviously to spur on the economy, but at the same time managing the health risks. Because the reality of the matter is that, if tomorrow if this is not managed well, then there can be an outbreak, and which we obviously don't want. We saw in New Zealand's situation, they said they were COVID-free, and then within a week, we now understand they have 13 cases now. And so the questions have been asked of us, why do you still want to have some of these measures in place? Because the moment that you open it up and you can get somebody getting COVID-19, they'll be the first ones to complain, saying, why did you open it up? So we have to take what we call a phased approach. We have 3 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. These new measures are what we call phase 2 measures that we put in place. So with that as a backdrop and background, I'd like to now ask Dr. Fong to make a few comments in respect of those health considerations. And then we'll just a couple of comments from the panel over here. And then we'd like to open up the floor if you have any questions, any queries. I know some of you, or a number of you, have made submissions to the budget. As you know, the submissions have officially closed, but you can, of course, over here today may want to expand or just highlight some of those things. And as I said, the budget is going to be delivered in a couple of weeks' time. So the whole idea is to have that level of communication, to be able to hear from you. I know a lot of retailers are actually, of course, being hurt, essentially because of lack of disposable income available to people. The schools, of course, are opening up. When this pandemic started, we were told that the children were most vulnerable. now, because we are now being told, the science is telling us that the children are the least vulnerable. These are some of the uncertainties and the unknowns, because it is the very state of flux regarding the science around it. And of course, Dr. James Fong will talk about that. But we're putting in place these measures. Of course, it means when the school kids travel now, the buses will start running, and then of course, they go to the shops and buy the Chinese lolly or whatever it is. So the economy starts moving, and that level of engagement starts taking place. But at the same time, there's still being measures put in place to ensure that there is some form of safety around that. So I'll now ask Dr. Fong to make a few comments, and then we can ask the other speakers to speak. Thank you.